will really much focus my presentation on the operational arrangements for an IP project in Portugal, coming from our experience piloting the IP from 2016 to 2021. It was an EU-funded project. I'm now moving on to the operational arrangements regarding the implementation of the IP in the Alcobaça Monastery. Our baseline was the diagnoses that were made several years ago, and in 2016 we knew that there was no strategic planning. So contracting authorities tend not to plan in advance, so it's likely to find contracts that don't seem urgent. CAs or contracting authorities often lack human, technical, and technological resources for procurement. You can find in many contracting authorities just one person dealing with public procurement and dealing with lots of contracts and needing to implement all the procedures. They don't produce good quality procurement data, and that's key, not just because by producing good quality procurement data, they can better formulate the price, for example, for some contracts, and to monitor contract implementation. Most citizens are not knowledgeable about public procurement, as I said, even journalists. Lack of transparency regarding procurement data increases distrust, and civil monitoring and community engagement are key. This was our baseline in 2016, and this continues to be our baseline until now, to be honest. So we start working with the General Directorate of Cultural Heritage, which is a public agency within the Ministry of Culture that is responsible for ensuring the proper management, safeguard, enhancement, conservation, and restoration of cultural heritage in our country. There were many operational challenges faced by this specific contracting authority, specifically because of budgetary constraints. At that point, the annual budget for the cultural sector was around 1% of the overall budget, so they don't have much money, and so it's very hard for them to access to funds to secure the conservation and restoration of these monuments. On the other hand, the type of procurement performed by DGPC is very specific because you have highly technical skills for restoration and conservation. We don't have many companies in Portugal able to perform such works, so you ended up having, a very narrow universe of potential bidders with all that comes along in these circumstances. So we monitor two works that were funded with EU funds through Centro 2020, which is the operational program in the region where the monastery is located. So the renovation of the conventual port and shop, around 300,000 euros, and the conservation of the west and north facades. So this was key, and this was important because the renovation of the conventual port and shop allowed to increase the revenue of the monastery in terms of entries, because people needed to pass to a new port to get into the monastery, and they would need to pay tickets because the monastery also has a church, and so many people goes and just visits the church and not the monastery. So having a new entrance was important, and also to have a shop where they can sell, memorabilia to tourists and visitors. And the conservation of the west and north facades, of course, it's also because it's important to conserve the monastery, which is located in a very small town, and all the town lives and breathes because of the monastery, to be honest. So the social and economic value of the monastery in Alcobaça is huge, aside, the cultural value as a UNESCO classified monument. These are the contracts that we monitor. In fact, we monitored 4 contracts. The conservation of the west and north facades had 3 contracts, and the renovation of the conventual port and shop 1 contract. These contracts are all published in Portal Base, and we were able to follow up the implementation of the public procurement procedures from scratch, from needs assessment to final accounting, payment, and penalties. So all these 5 main public procurement process stages, they were included in our civic monitoring plan. The civic monitoring tools we used: technical meeting, analysis of documents and processes, guided tours, conferences and seminars. We provided recommendations and suggestions to change some of the tender documents, and also regarding, some of the decisions taken by the contracting authority. We produced reports, we developed outreach, and we also organized workshops. So, and that's why I think the IP is such an interesting tool, because it is not an audit procedure. It's a participation of a civic monitoring independent organization such as TI Portugal in the overall public procurement cycle. So in terms of operational arrangements, we had commitments. So we needed to mobilize commitments, technical expertise. We needed to work on communication flows. We needed to develop trust between ourselves and the contracting authority, the GPC. We promoted civic engagement, and we developed outreach. I will discuss each one of these elements. So in terms of commitments, we had a first memorandum of understanding signed with the contracting authority in 2015. That was because the contracting authority also applied to monitor the IP in the country. So to be honest, I think it was really interesting, because it was the contracting authority that approached TI Portugal for us to become independent monitors, not the opposite. So they came to us and they said, listen, there is this opportunity from the European Commission. They're trying to pilot Integrity Pacts all over Europe. We would like to host one of these Integrity Pacts. Are you available to work with us as independent monitors? So we signed a memorandum of understanding for the first stage, because the second stage is IP2. And for the IP2, we signed another memorandum of understanding in 2017, establishing the collaborative partnership with the contracting authority. And finally, in 2018, we signed the Integrity Pact, which determined all the implementation of the project in the country, including communication flows, sanctions, and also the institutional arrangements. I can give you a very brief example, but I think it's important for you to understand, is that within the public procurement code, it was impossible to determine that all bidders applying or presenting their proposals to participate in the tenders or in the construction of the works, that they needed to sign the Integrity Pact. But we were able to include that disposition in the tender documentation. So it was a three-party agreement between the contracting authority, all the bidders applying for the tenders, and ourselves, of course. They pre-signed it, and then the ones that were selected to perform the construction work also signed the IP. We also needed people. So we created our civic monitoring team. The civic monitoring team, of course, had elements from Transparency International Portugal, myself as project manager, Martin, the project assistant, and the advocacy officer, that were several over the years. It's very hard for us to secure comms people, as you can imagine. And then we had this expert committee. The expert committee was composed by a legal expert, team leader, so a specialist in public procurement from a legal perspective, an architect, a civil engineer, a financial auditor, and later on we thought important to also include a political scientist, an open contracting expert, because of the use of open data, and also because of all the advocacy and policy making around public procurement. This team worked throughout the implementation of the project, and we worked very well with the contracting authority. We produced a number of reports, a number of recommendations for each stage of the public procurement process, and also for the different contracts that were included in the IP implementation. We also produced a number of guidelines and dissemination materials so that people better understand in Portugal what was the IP, the role of the IP in boosting public procurement, and also why clean contracting is so key for the country's sustainable development. This is all online in our Integrity Pacts webpage. We also developed the communication flows with the contracting authority. We use Treasury, which is a secured cloud system, encrypt cloud system. We had a specific treasure just for the project with a password that was just known by the team working in the project. And this was also very, very relevant for them because they needed to be sure that the documents they were sharing with us wouldn't be, distributed to others. So I think from a personal perspective, even from the team leaders from the contracting authority side, us presenting them with all these security standards for information flow and communication flow was really, really important and key also for them to share with us documentation that they might not be sharing with us if they were not secure that it was just kept in closed doors. We also developed comms records. This I think is very important. When did we ask certain information? When did we receive that information? This was important also to make clear to them that we were recording the interactions that we were having with the contracting authority. And for them also, it was really important for them to record the interactions they had with us. Because as you know, when there is some sort of misunderstanding or eventually something good went wrong, at least we could have all this record for our security, but also for their security. So it was an honest communication, but very organized communication as well, because we are two different institutions with two different missions and visions, and it was very important to make clear from the beginning what would be the way we communicate would certainly impact the way the project was being implemented. So there was, of course, some sort of informality in the sense that we start knowing each other, but everything that mattered was recorded in terms of IP implementation.
This regional program. I am working for a regional development agency, which is the management authority that ensures the implementation of Waste regional program. And we envisage the use of IP as a pilot activity, which of course, as a IP you learn in this course, has a main objective to create a climate of mutual trust and good collaboration between project beneficiaries and civil society. Of course, we ended up this pilot project in our program, and we need to ask the question, okay, let's identify the pilot project. So my presentation, it's explaining our steps towards this pilot project. So first of all, the role so far, what we did so far, and first we approved, of course, the program in October 2020. As Marco said, the next steps were actually took some training on implementation of integrity pacts, such as these types of trainings. We participated in APA trainings between November 2022 and February 2023, and we after those trainings, we starting applying the knowledge on how to implement integrity pacts in the Western region. And let me tell you that from the start, our thinking was to apply the integrity pact for strategic projects as within our program, because they were, they had some justification because they were strategic in the program, and of course they have, if you know, they have specific communications activities that they need to report. This is our first understanding, and of course this was a little bit changed because of this type of trainings that we are here today. And I will later provide you. I put here the milestone informing the monitoring committee of our program. Our program for the Integrity Pact is an important step for us, and I will explain later why it was for us this 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 milestone important. So as I said, at first we started with the thinking that our pilot project is within those strategic important projects. But we, after, as I said, these types of training, we starting implementing an analysis. And the starting point was the historical information from previous programming period, in our case, regional operation program. And we took two steps. Basically, we apply some criteria regarding the selection of, we call it regional intervention, type of interventions, let's say, where to implement the IP projects. And of course, okay, after the relevant type of intervention, okay, let's select then the next step is to select the actual projects, the actual project within that type of intervention that will implement. And I will further explain what we took into consideration in such an analysis. So the criteria that we took for the first step, the regional intervention, the types of interventions, we took the relevance of the regional intervention to achieve the objectives of our program, the impact of the regional intervention for the community, the complexity of the financing investments, and the fourth one is the availability and capacity of the independent monitors, and the status of project goals. And now, it's not too technical, but try to make it briefly. If you have any questions, please interrupt, or if they are in the chat, I cannot see the chat, but please let me know. I need further clarification or explain our thinking on this type of criteria. And the first one was relevance of the regional intervention, and we took into consideration risk regarding non-submission, and we think of the quality of submission projects or the percentage way by contracting project versus submitting project under the historical, as I said, the previous programming period. This is how we score this risk. Another one that we took into consideration was difficult management risk, we call it, which means the beneficiary degree of correctly estimating its financial needs and duration of the project implementation, meaning the completed project versus the contracted projects. No, again, historical data. Risk, and the last one for this criteria, the risk of corruption and bid fraud, meaning the quality and the legality of the purchase made by the beneficiary. We score it by the most often correction percentage applied in procurement contracts under the programming period. The next one was the impact of the community. We calculate this as a value allocated to the regional intervention from the total amount of the allocation of the program. Of course, this was our relevant in our case. You can go either by program, either by priority. It depends on how we will try to implement your IP. And we give a scoring below 2%, between 2 and 5, and or 2% to 4. Again, we use this criteria to identify the types of intervention that it is more useful to apply the IP. The complexity of finance investments, we estimated the experience in managing our experience as a managing authority to manage the typology of the regional intervention, type of intervention that we envisage to finance within our program. So, for example, we consider relevant the types of intervention that we already finance in the past programming period. We consider it, and we continue this type of intervention in the current programming period. We consider that we have the relevant experience to continue, and also satisfactory. We had we had some sort of continuation of the same typology of the intervention, but not all the expenditure were eligible in the past programming period compared to the new ones. And where we have types of interventions that we were not envisaged in the last programming period, then we consider our experience incomplete, let's say, and we gave points accordingly. The fourth one was the availability and capacity of the independent monitors, and we consider this the waiting time expected for direct and indirect projects beneficiary to see the project results in their daily life. And we calculated this based on the timetable, the calendar that we as a managing authority have the obligation to provide a calendar of the project calls within our program website. And we calculated this as an estimated number of months planned by us as a managing authority from the date opening the submission of the project until the estimated date of completion of the implementation of the project. We consider in our case the um, how can I say, the threshold as 40 months. Uh, this this was done mainly because we ask our applicants to have document of high maturity, and we consider it relevant. It depends on the maturity of the documents that the applicants needs to apply for the financing. This was our consideration for the 40 month milestone, let's say. And status of the project calls. Again, this was done also considering this calendar of application calls, but this was estimated the number of months until the opening of the project call. And we consider this milestone as 24 months. Again, this is based on the strategy of the managing authority, because we, as a managing authority, we started the calls that we have experience with, mainly continuing the the calls that we finance in the old programming period, because we have relevant experience and we know what to finance, and then we started the applicants guides more. We created the applicant guides more easily, and we postpone, let's say, the new interventions that we didn't envisage in the old programming period. Then we started our documentation, and we will take longer to actually put into consultation the application guide. So this is more or less based on the strategy of the managing authority. And of course, applying this scoring, we ended up with, let's say, in our case, 5 typology of the interventions that we consider relevant to apply the integrity pacts within these types of intervention.